Hello there, YouTube. This is Brownie again from the Young Zings, and today I have a discussion video regarding the latest batch of OCG deck lists that poured out of Japan over the weekend. This list was compiled by the YG organization. I highly recommend you guys check them out. They do this every single week, and I sincerely appreciate it. They do this all for free, by the way. Please check them out. Regardless, let's kind of move on to the topic at hand, which is, as if you're looking at your screen, just this one deck that's mentioned 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times out of 9 just on this screen. If you scroll down, you see more of this deck, and you see a few other decks, but you can kind of tell that this deck is kind of dominating. It is called the Performage and Pal deck, or the EMEm, or the Pepe. It is comprised of the Performages and the Perform Pals. I'm not joking. The Perform Pals, those really crappy common cards you got from your Duelist Alliance, Next Challengers, and Secrets of Eternity packs. This is what's destroying the OCG right now. But it's just a few cards in particular that's really kind of the culprits here, which we'll get into later. This is not a new problem, though. This deck has been kind of dominating the OCG for a few months, 2 months now, 2 to 3 months. Yeah, but probably about 3. This deck has been destroying ever since August because of one card in particular, which is the Performance Pal Pendulum Wizard, or the Performance Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, which we will rant about later. But notice a difference between how the deck has evolved over time. Before the OCG ban list and before Breakers of Shadow, the deck was still dominant. It was still, without a doubt, the best deck in the OCG, but it ran more. I mean, for lack of a better word, it ran more cards that interacted. It ran actually like some actual spells and traps, and it was really good. But there were other decks that were still had the potential of topping when they didn't tutor their deck completely to destroy this one deck. After the October ban list put, of note, I guess, it put Insight Magician to 1, and it put Bottomless Trap Hole to 3. I guess other things, they killed Necros by limiting Shrit. I mean, they're still viable, but it's just they're not as good as this deck. They hit the Pendulum Magician deck, but they did not hit this deck, even though this deck was still, without a doubt, the best deck in the OCG. They can't play Insight Magician. Insight Magician is strictly for the Magician deck. He searches only Pendulum Magician monsters, and none of these guys play Magician Pendulum monsters. They all play Perform Pals and Perform Mages. The main culprit for this destruction, so to speak, the reason why this deck is running the show, yes, thank you. The main reason why this deck is completely vaporizing everything in the OCG is because of a few cards in particular. I think the main culprits would be the Performance Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, the Performance Pal Pendulum Wizard, Luster Pendulum, the Draco Slayer, Performance Pal Scrollcombat Joker, Performance Pal Monk Keyboard, Liberating Ariadne, Solemn Notice, not Twin Twister, and the Performance Pal Plush Fire. These cards are kind of, I guess, I guess you could say they're kind of the most abused, the most kind of head scratchers in the deck. They kind of, you kind of read it and you're like, oh, that's okay. And then you realize like how it really fits in the deck as a whole, and it's disgusting, for lack of a better word. I have no problem with power creep. I understand that it's a natural part of the game. This is different. I've seen the gradual escalation of the power of decks across the Duelist Alliance. I saw it when Charles came out, when Klee came out, when Necros came out, and with Pendulum Magicians, I saw how that kind of worked in the OCG. And I saw, it was just natural power creep, how decks just kind of got better over time. This is different. This is an exponential improvement, or I guess an exponential power creep. Let me to explain, like, kind of why I think this card in particular is the biggest perpetrator of this deck. The Perform Pal Pendulum Wizard's monster effect, or, as a joke, Yuya's dad, because it looks like the protagonist is, the protagonist of Arc 5, it looks like his dad. It's actually kind of funny. His monster effect, though, is not funny. Its effect is if this card is special summoned, you can target up to 2 cards you control, destroy them. If you do, add Performance Pal monsters with different names from your deck to your hand equal to the number of the cards destroyed, except this card. This card has a once per turn clause. Two of the main cards that you can search is these 2 cards, which is like fine. These cards on their own aren't that bad, except the fact that they search more cards. This card searches any Performance Pal, Magician, Pendulum, or Odd-Eyes monster from your deck to your hand when it is normal summoned. And this card can search any Performance Pal and any Odd-Eyes monster when it's just placed in the Pendulum scale during your main phase. But no, I haven't even gotten into why this card is even worse than it is on paper. There are a lot of cards that, when they're destroyed, they get their effects. But typically, Pendulum monsters don't do that, except for 2 Pendulum monsters in particular. That would be the Liberating Ariadne, or Ariadne the Absolver, and the Performance Pal Plush Fire, or the Performance Pal Flame Mascot. Notice how their pendulum effects, like, they're decent, but their monster effect is, for this guy, when he's destroyed a battle card effect, summon a Performage from the deck. Her effect is, when it's destroyed by battle or card effect, you can reveal 3 counter trap cards from your deck, and your opponent adds them to your hand. The rest go back into the deck. Notice how Ariadne does not have a once per turn clause. What Performance Pal Pendulum Wizard can do is he can destroy these cards in their Pendulum scale or on the field, and their monster effects will trigger. This card summons Performage, and this card searches any counter trap card. Solemn Notice is a popular search target. Notice how a lot of these OCG decks are maining 3 Solemn Notice, because if you kill Ariadne, you can go ahead and reveal 3 Solemn Notice from your deck, and you ask your opponent, hey, would you mind picking one of these? I'm going to add one of them to my hand right quick, and they will not be very pleased about that. Lesser Pendulum the Draco Slayer is also another reason why these cards are kind of, I guess, dorky in a way, because he can also trigger their effects, and you could search new copies. Kind of discussing, very simple combo that I see is you Luster Pendulum and you kill Ariadne, search a Solemn Notice, and then you add another Ariadne with Luster Pendulum's effect. You place the other Ariadne in the Pendulum scale and Pendulum summon this one back, and if you can, Pendulum summon the Performance Pal Pendulum Sorcerer, which is very easily searchable by these 2 little friends. His effect will trigger, and you can destroy both Ariadnes, the one that you Pendulum summon back and the one that's in the Pendulum zone, and search 2 more counter trap cards. Note that you just searched 3 counter trap cards. That's just kind of crazy. Aside from this deck kind of getting all, if not most, if not all, the tops in those OCG tournaments, notice how the other decks that are topping are kind of structured. When Burning Abyss came out in the OCG, it actually kind of shook things up there. It became more diverse. The best decks at that time were the Performage and Pal, the Magician deck, the Monarchs, and the Burning Abyss. That was before Breakers of Shadow and before the list. Notice how now, after Breakers of Shadow, this Burning Abyss deck had to resort to maining 3 Horn of Heaven and 2 Anti-Spell Fragrance in order to kill the Performage and Pal. This one had to main Anti-Spell Fragrance as well. This one had to main Anti-Spell Fragrance as well. It's kind of a problem where you have one deck that's completely running the show, and the only decks that can compete are the decks that are completely designed so that the best deck cannot play. It's kind of like how a lot of decks would main Mistake in order to kill Necroz, but it's actually kind of worse than that, because there are some decks that couldn't handle Mistake, or some decks that decks that couldn't handle Mistake wouldn't play it. But there are some decks like Burning Abyss, they don't like to play Anti-Spell because they can't spell summon the guys from the hand, but they have to. Otherwise, they can't beat this deck. If they let this deck actually play, then they're going to have a problem. They have to literally make it so that they just can't play Send their Scales, and then a Burning Abyss deck can finally run over them. Also notice how their side decks have kind of evolved. I noticed a sharp rise in play in Droll and Lockbird in the OCG side decks. Its effect is, if your opponent adds a card from their deck to the hand, you can send it to the graveyard, from your hand to the graveyard, and they can't search for the rest of the turn. You can't either, but it's their turn. They're siding 3 of these, 1 to 3. It's actually very, very popular. They used to side Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit instead, because it kind of had a similar principle, how you could use it against one of their pendulums and it dies, and then they don't get their search. They can't search with one keyboard because it needs to stay face up to resolve. But the problem with Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit, it only kills 1. Joel and Lockbird does not let them search for the entire turn, and they can only stop it with Solemn Notice, which, as you know, thanks to this card, is not very hard to get. But just notice how like they had to resort to running this card in order to kill this deck. I mean, it's just kind of disgusting in a way. And then they didn't really deal with this deck on the list, and it's just kind of gotten worse, especially with Breakers of Shadow. If I just pick a random Performage deck, let's count how many Breakers of Shadow cards there are in here. Okay, so we got Liberating Ariadne, check. On keyboard, check. Twin Twister, check. Solemn Notice, check. Doesn't matter really about the extra deck. You can kind of notice that's just 4 cards that are playing at multiples that are pretty big in the deck. For sure there's some more. I can't really think of any more off the top of my head, but you can just kind of already see that Breakers of Shadow has a profound impact on the power of this deck. It's probably what set it overboard, so to speak. Again, but what's the question now comes is what's stopping this deck from materializing in the TCG? In December, we're going to be getting this card in the Pendulum Structure deck, along with the Magician cards. That deck is going to be very, very powerful. I actually believe it's going to be the best deck until Breakers of Shadow. Until then, it really depends on the OCG imports, what's going to happen then. What's stopping the Magician deck from evolving into this deck, into the Entermage deck, is just this card, really. We're going to have all these cards. These cards are Breakers of Shadow, Breakers of Shadow. This card just came out in Dimension of Chaos, Breakers of Shadow. We're getting this card in December. Just got this card in Dimension of Chaos, Breakers of Shadow, Breakers of Shadow. The main difference between the OCG and the TCG are these cards. Shockmaster's banned in the TCG. I highly doubt it's going to come back. I only think they're going to bring it back just to push this deck, because this deck wasn't really intended. Laval Chain is also probably going to stay banned. I don't really see why they'd bring him back. It's pretty big in the deck. You can send Zephyros, you can send the Trick Clown, you can send the Damage Juggler, so you can search this card. It's kind of, this card is actually pretty integral, but it still doesn't, just because they don't have these 2 cards, doesn't really curb the power of the deck. Their rank 4 toolbox is more potent over there. They have Rafflesia. We're getting her in January, but we're not going to have her when the Pendulum Structure deck hits. And we're not going to get Utopian Lightning until March in a manga promo, except Europe. Sorry, Europe. You're going to, I mean, actually, you can kind of consider it a blessing if you wish. There are 2 sides to that coin. So we're getting him in March. The OCG rank 4 toolbox is considerably more powerful. And notice how number 106 Giant Hand also saw Rise and play in the OCG. Every single one of these decks are playing this card. We can't. I mean, in actuality, we don't have access to this card, Giant Hand. It's a YCS prize card. No, I mean, you're a normal guy isn't going to be able to get to that card. But yeah, you can just kind of say that this card is really the main thing that's stopping this deck from evolving from Magician to EMEm, or Pepe, or whatever you want to call it. It's a V-Jump promo in Japan. When it's going to come out here is unable to be determined, but I guess possible places it could be. It could be in the Breakers of Shadow in January as an OCG import. It could be in May in the Shining Victories as an OCG import. It could also be God forbid, a Shonen Jump promo, and that would be another thing to steal from Europe. Again, God bless them. I actually have I have a problem with this card. I really think that this card, I think they need to ban this card in the OCG. I think that's going to do a lot to fix the deck. I don't think it's going to fix it entirely. I feel like this card is just one of the main perpetrators that really just sets this deck above all else. This card destroys, and this card's kind of a problem too. It's a win in a Pendulum Mirror match, but it's not that. This card is just, it's on a whole new level. But of course, that is just my opinion. I guess my little rant about the deck. I think it's bad news. I think it's I mean it's the best deck we've ever seen. I don't think Necrons was as powerful as full power Dragon Rulers, but hey, I mean, if you're a buddy and you want to do a little experiment, go ahead. One of you play this deck, and the other is going to play full power Dragon Rulers. I can guarantee you, the deck you're looking at right now is going to win most of the time. Of course, that is just my opinion. I'd love to hear what you guys think about this deck. Also, let me know what you want to call it. I guess people keep switching the name. Performage and Pal, EMEm, Pepe, Yuya's dad. Deck. That's funny. Yeah, but let me know what you guys want. What you guys want to name the deck, I guess. I think we need to come to like an agreement in terms of how to name it. Whether or not like you're as worried as I am, or you don't think it's that big a deal, or if I'm just being paranoid about or complaining about power creep and all that. Of course, like, comment, and subscribe for more fun discussions. This was obviously a very fun one. Please just of course let me know, subscribe, and all that fun jazz. I'll see you guys next time.